We're going to go ahead and get started in just a moment. Did you get that envelope? Jimmy?
Yes, sir.
We're not going to start without you getting it.
No, we got that earlier today. Damn it,
All right. Appreciate you all being here. We'll go ahead and get started with the work session. We've got a pretty jam-packed agenda. I'm going to ask you to try to keep your remarks and your briefings concise. I know that we have several items before we get to the city council agenda, but for the sake of time, I'd like to still get to our agenda and go through at least a portion of it. I don't know if we'll get through all 36 items in the agenda meeting, but it'd be nice to get through as much of that as we can. So without further ado, we'll jump right into sanitation discussions. Mayor, who will be presenting those? Richard? Can I ask someone, I know it's hot in here, I guess we can leave the doors open for a little bit longer, but I'm looking straight out there at that bright light.
Thank you, Council. It's nice to be back with you in person and not trying to text and keep up with the questions. As you know, at the last council meeting, there was a discussion, and it's been an ongoing discussion with the fact that, you know, we have an operational expense for our sanitation operation, and we have an income, and there's a disparity between those two. And this year, it's pretty stout. Part of it is the debt service on equipment that was purchased in the last 36 months that we're making payments to own. And so there was two kind of things asked of Kim and myself is, you know, where are we and what are options and things of that nature. And we kind of worked on two documents, and one I just wanted to point out, we did kind of update neighboring communities and what they're doing. And two communities that are at least what I consider to be apple to apples comparison. If you look at the city of Saraland, they offer their sanitation customers twice a week garbage, once a week trash, and they have a recycle program, which is identical to what we're doing. And right now, the city of Saraland is charging $20.20 a month. And in the city of Gulf Shores, if you are south of 2nd Avenue, which is basically the beach, they offer twice a week garbage, once a week trash, and recycling. And as you can see, that twice a week fee is $21.61. Those are really the only two neighboring communities that are kind of identical in services, and you can see what they're charging. I will denote that the other one that I didn't mention, which must be in the same boat as us, the city of Orange Beach is twice a week on garbage, once a week on trash, and they do offer recycling every other week, and they're at $16.25, which is slightly more than what we're charging the residential rate, which is currently $15.80 in the city of Fairhope. Just as getting a little closer to home, the city of Daphne right now is once a week garbage, once a week trash, and they have suspended their recycle program, but they have passed by ordinance that when that program resumes, 3 months post resumption of recycling, there will be an automatic increase of $3, which will take them to $18.40. And in the city of Spanish Fort, and I will tell you that their garbage and recycle is handled by a private carrier. Their once a week garbage, they have demand-based trash, call in, and they will offer you recycling, but it's a $9 upcharge. So their base rate for once a week garbage and demand-based trash is $16.58, and if you want recycling, that's a $9, so that would take you to $25.58. So that's kind of just comparables. So what does that mean for us and everything else? I will tell you, and I'll say this with a very straight face, you've been looking at the budget. If you'll notice in this year's sanitation budget, there's not a lot of extras in there. There are things that are just what they are. Salaries are fixed. We have been very mindful of trying to control and be accountable for overtime. Landfill charges are what they are, meaning that whatever we take into the landfill that we have to pay by the tipping fees, by the tonnage, are fixed. Fuel. And, you know, I will tell you, I'm always scared to budget fuel numbers because right now, in the last few years, fuel has been very favorable to us, but wasn't that long ago when diesel, even at what we're buying it for, was in excess of $3.50 a gallon. And, you know, in a year's time, that number could inflate greatly. One of the big numbers in that budget that is the debt service on equipment purchase that we're paying for to own on a yearly basis. That number will eventually, I think, Kim and I talked about it, this is the worst year. Next year should be about the same, and then that will drop off as those debts are retired. So with that said, you know, the only additional budgeted item that we're requesting is an additional trash truck. We had one last year. It was approved in the budget. We took it out. The electrical crew ended up establishing a tree crew, so they actually picked up that contract and purchased that equipment, and we've kind of kept the oldest of our units running, but we do need to replace it. And here's the reality: if the budget passes tonight and we get it back to you in about 30 days to approve the procurement, we realistically are probably 9 to 10 months out before we take delivery of that new truck. That has just been a reality of that type of equipment. It's kind of built to order. So, you know, how do we solve the problem? And I think we heard some of you mention that we're not looking to profiteer off of our sanitation, but we need to kind of close on a balanced budget approach to cost versus income. As I stated, right now we are at $15.80 for residential, $20.26 for business, and then we do have a few handicapped customers that are $20. I just equivalent that to what we call equivalent customer units, meaning that I took the monthly income divided by the residential rate and came up with that. What is our growth rate? Realistically, the last few years, that growth rate has been about 2.65%. I kind of backed off of that and used 2.2 in that spreadsheet that you see. And if we keep the rates the same, just based on organic growth, you can kind of see the first line. You see 2021, no net change. By 2022, the natural increase of about 46,000, and it just keeps clicking up. And you project that out to 2027, at that growth rate, you ended up with about $51,644 more than you have today coming in. As you can see by the deficit numbers, that doesn't really move the dial. If you looked at some options to where we're trying to get to, and I think that it is the opinion of myself and the city treasurer that we need to be in that competitive range of around $20. Okay, that's still just basically covering 90% of operational cost. And why we kind of look at that is understand we service all the city facilities, we service park and recreation, we service special events of the city, we service Mardi Gras, all those things that occur in our community. And probably that represents about 10% of our operational costs. So that's kind of the in-kind that we need to take care of. Where about 90% of our operational cost is that direct service to customers. So with that said, and Kim can explain this better, she has mentioned that having a non-rounded off number is a billing and accounting headache, meaning that the 1580 or the 2026 is cumbersome from accounting and bookkeeping standpoint. So this looks at two scenarios. One, we look at an increase of $220 in year one, followed by a $1 increase per year for years 2 and 3 for a total of $420, which would take the residential customer rate to $1580. And whatever that number would be recommended for business would get it to an even number as well. And that is a request from our treasurer. And as you can see, under that option in 2021, that nets out about $293,163 to the good. And as you can see, by 2027, that number has moved up to about $637,000 and some change. Option 2 would be to spread out a little further, $1.20 in year 1, followed by $1 per year for years 2, 3, and 4. It gets you to the same place, it just takes a little longer. And you know, I know it's very, very, very difficult to talk about raising fees of any kind, but you know, the one thing I can say, and you probably can relate to this, is when I open my utility bill, this time of year, it's the gas on it that controls how much that bill is, and that's the only number I look at. And when it's summertime and you're watering the grass and things like that, you look into water and sewer. You know, it's easy to be dismissive, but 420 over a 3-year period of time or a 4-year period of time, when you really look at the normal cost of inflation, cost of living, it's you know, it's not out of the sorts. And looking at communities that are offering the level of service, most of them in our neighboring area are already at that number, if not higher. And you know, it's always a tough thing to look at. And you know, I don't think garbage and sanitation should be heavily subsidized. I think it should be subsidized to the point because we do provide services to our fellow departments in the city and to special events and activities. But you know, I don't think it's the margin that the deficit represents right now, and I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
Let me, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Council, on page 21, if you're looking at the budget that was handed out, these should be the latest and greatest numbers. Page 21, just in case you're wondering what we're at right now in the 2021 revised proposed budget, there is a deficit, and if I can see that right, of $933,000.
53.
What?
953.
R953. I'm looking at
933.
I think I'm looking at 933.
Okay. Yeah, revised, I'm sorry.
Okay, but there is a 953 on there, right. So, but last year, we can look at actuals. Last year, there was a deficit of 591, almost 592,000. So, while you're contemplating an option 1 or an option 2 or any other option, I want to throw out an option 3.
Absolutely.
And the option 3 is pretty simple. The option 3, so if you look at, if you look at option 1, we're still at big deficits. Well, if you just go back to last year's, which maybe didn't have that garbage truck purchase, and I'm kind of looking at it as more of a normal year, 563. Option 1, we would break even in 2023. We'd still be at a deficit all the way out, even, you know, and I'm not even taking inflation into account, all the way out to you know, about 2024. So I would even throw out for discussion an option number 3, which is a $2.20 increase in year 1 and a $2 increase in year 2. In other words, it's option 1, and then instead of having a $1 increase in years 2 and 3, it's a $2.20 and then a $2. I mean, we got to make up. We got to close the gap.
Why don't we just raise it to $20 and be done?
Or an option 4 could be that too, Jim. I'd just look at that as a percentage increase. In terms of dollars and cents, you know, I think most people would say it's not a lot. It's about $50 a year over 12 months. In terms of percentage-wise, it's a big number. But so, other council members have thoughts on this? You are calling trash debris removal, right?
Yes.
Garbage is household garbage, trash is debris removal.
Correct.
I think we need to get the different utilities more in sync with what they are. You know, to overcharge, and I'm not saying but you charge more in one area and then you offset a different area. And they ought to all be closer to being level funding in my mind. But I would say let's just move it up. I mean, I would be in favor of doing the once a week, but I know nobody else wants to do that. So just charge the $4.20 extra and do it to even 20 and move on.
I mean, it's market price. I mean, from what we're looking at, we're doing a lot more work for a lot less money than the other municipalities. So it only makes sense. I mean, we can't continue to grow at the deficit rate that we're growing. And I think the community can understand that.
Well, not only that, as we are hopefully passing the budget tonight, I also think of so many discussions that I've had over the past several weeks of how we've got a lot higher turnover rate of our employees right now, and it's harder to retain them, and we have to get competitive with our pay, our employee pay, and the more we fall behind, the harder it is to retain quality employees, and the more it costs us to retrain employees. I know that, I'll bet you there's not a department head in this room that wouldn't agree with that statement and is not concerned with that. Every one of you are, I'm sure. Councilman Brown?
I like Councilman Conyers option 4 personally. I think this department has been underfunded for years, and we've had this discussion in years past, and I think it's past time to increase the rates.
We have increased them now. They did increase $1 a year for 3 years, beginning in, I think, 2016 or 17.
You know, we only,
But I don't remember how much of a deficit. I can't believe that we left that much of a deficit when we passed that.
It's, you know, it's been pretty consistent, and what really exposed that is, at the same time, we had a heavy equipment need. We replaced 3 garbage trucks, trash truck, and recycle trucks in that same period that the increases. So, you know, there was an offset, but we went from 1,280 to 1,580, and, you know, and even in 2017, the market rate probably was 1,880 at least.
Right.
So that was the problem. We were chasing it, and we were behind severely when we started chasing it.
Right. And I think an $8 increase on a $12 bill would probably been met with some resistance at the time. But I'll be honest, I hadn't had a single person complain to me about $15.80. I like your analogy. You're looking at that gas component, or you're looking at that water component, or you're looking at that electrical component. Councilman Boone, what are your thoughts?
Well, if I gotta get shot, I'd rather get 1 to the head than rather have 5 to the stomach, so I'd like to get it over with, and I kind of agree with Councilman Conyers. Let's just do it.
A good analogy.
What I'm hearing is the one that's not on there is the option 4.
Okay.
I would, Councilman Conyers, if you, I believe you said 4, I mean, would you live with the 420? Make it
That's what I said.
420.
Make it an easy $20.
Am I hearing that? I think I'm hearing that unanimously of the 4 of y'all, and I want it to be $5. But
No argument.
along with y'all.
No
I'm gonna go along
argument.
with y'all, though.
Sure,
Get
don't
along.
get shot in the head, eh?
Really want $5, but Clerk, I'm hearing 420. Can you prepare some legislation for that?
Sure will.
Okay.
And I'll get everything she needs, and you know, I think probably, and I'll talk with Kim, but probably the commercial goes to 25 from that.
Yeah, so do you guys want the corresponding commercial rates to increase proportionally?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to round those numbers off?
25 even.
25 on, and then,
420, yeah. You want that to be 25, and what about HC? You want that to be 24? 24?
25 as well.
Well, that's going up that's going up $5.
24.
But I mean, the other one's going up $4.74.
One's going up 420, and the other's going 474. So 20, 25, 25. Everybody good with that? All right, we ought to be well positioned for the next several years until everybody, based on my comments, tells Richard they would need a raise.
all right, well, thank y'all very much, and I'll work with Lisa and Kim to get that to you, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you,
Councilman Burrell, what did you say the commercial rate was again?
Well,
$20.26 right now.
for business, and then there's, the HC is $20. So they're both $20.
And they're going up to, say, $4.20?
25, going up to an even 25 on both of those.
Gotcha.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Council President, do
Yes,
you have any
ma'am.
certain effective date?
I'm sorry.
Do you have any kind of effective date for that to go into effect?
Good question.
Immediately, or do you want it?
When do y'all want to make that effective? Y'all want to make that, you get it, put a 30-day notice out there?
April 1st.
Yeah. Why don't we make that, that's a good date, Councilman Conyers. If we pass that at the, that'd be an ordinance, right?
Yes, it will.
So it has to be introduced at the next meeting. It would get adopted in March at the first meeting and we could make it effective in that ordinance, I'd say April 1.
Yeah, because billing has to have a little time to get everything up to date, and so we'd have to have a little time from when y'all take final action for them actually to update the database. I think it's pretty straightforward, but still, that will work.
Okay, so April 4. 6 months, we'd have 6 months of this fiscal year. Those losses will look a little better.
A little bit better.
Okay. Good points. Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. Fairhope Arts and Crafts Committee. We have a couple of ladies here representing the Arts and Crafts Committee that want to approach the council and inform us of their thoughts, and I'm sure they're going to want to hear what our thoughts are.
I'll be back.
So we wanted to come and talk to you guys about rescheduling this year's festival into another date. Obviously, we had thought we had planned to where we could get around this by doing an all-Alabama show and staying within the restrictions and guidelines. However, hadn't quite happened the way we wanted it to. So staying with that same theme of keeping it an all-Alabama show, moving it back about 6 or 7 weeks, staying within, we're still coming out of post-pandemic stuff as well, hopefully, and then going forward with that plan. We've looked at several dates, we've consulted a lot of people, we've looked at other festivals around the country, trying to see what they're doing as well. And this postponing and rescheduling seems to be a trend. One of the things that we've looked at is a lot of people have made comments about moving to the fall. So we investigated that as well. Obviously, summer is too hot here, okay, so it's really not even an option. The fall, there's a lot more festivals, so we have a lot more competition. Also, it takes us about 6 or 7 months just to do the festival, so our plan is to have a full-fledged festival next March. And in order to be doing that, we'd be right on top of each other. So logistically, we're proposing to move it to April 30th, May 1st, and May 2nd.
So council, what this would look like is if they decide, or we collectively decide to reschedule it, no action would be needed to, say, cancel the current dates, but we would have to take action to allow them the use of the streets in that last weekend in April. Let me also throw out some more thoughts on this. We planned for a Christmas parade. We didn't have it, but you have to plan. So before everybody jumps up and down and says that it's going to be too early, we understand that might happen. We planned to have a New Year's Eve celebration because you have to plan, and we canceled that. We planned to have Arts and Crafts Festival, but it's being recommended that be changed. We planned to have Mardi Gras, but that was canceled. So when we say we're planning to do something, all of us, the 5 of us up here, the Arts and Crafts Committee, and the mayor all realize that that's, a plan, and nothing's written in stone in this day and age. We do understand that there is a raging pandemic, and while we don't want to reschedule it, we always have that option. So when you hear that if we decide to move the date, that's what we're doing for planning purposes. So before everybody lights up our email boxes and the Facebook, that you have to plan for any of this. We hope that things will be much, much better. We had hoped that they would be better by the 3rd week in March, right? And things are just, maybe there haven't been as many vaccinations. The pandemic hasn't cooled enough to have it. So we're planning. So I want to make that very clear.
That's
so
right.
Council, questions or comments?
Let me add that when we do postpone the festival, we will still be maintaining safety controls. 15 feet apart on the booths, hand sanitation stations. I mean, Sherry has been
Right.
integral in making all of that happen.
Right. Yeah, the planning involves the social distancing.
Correct.
And a reduced show in that it would be Alabama artists only. And I've had discussions with the committee about that. I was really concerned with putting off out-of-state artists and then losing them in future shows, and they've alleviated my concerns over that. We had some real good discussions about that. I believe they've done their due diligence. They're still going to be in the rotation for the spring festivals, around the southeast and around the country. So, I really didn't want to have to postpone it and then have some unintended consequences of future shows being damaged by this. But I like the answers that I heard earlier prior to this meeting, so thank you for that. So, Council, I know you must have some questions or comments on this.
Yeah, I mean, planning is one thing. I'm just going to be honest with you. Like Council President has spoken earlier, we've planned for a lot of things this year, and unfortunately, the good Lord has not allowed this virus to go away. Just this past week, I had 3 of my family members pass away from this virus. So the virus is real, okay? I don't mind planning for something in case we have a miracle, but I really don't think the miracle is going to happen. And we've tried to have gatherings before, and we saw in November what happened by empirical evidence, meaning we witnessed it, okay, and we had a super spread in Fairhope. And we were at 4 deaths, and now we're up over 50, maybe 60 now, I haven't looked. But I just want to remind everybody that the art festival would be a gathering, and unfortunately, grown-ups are hard-headed. I understand you're trying to follow this, not against you all. I understand you're trying to follow the CDC rules, but our job is to look out for the whole masses. And in my opinion, that wouldn't be a good idea because people are not going to follow the rules.
I'll jump on. Jody and I had a lot of conversations about this. So, my initial thoughts, encouragement was to try to find a date in the fall, and as they've already said tonight, that just gets you into the planning period for the next arts and crafts. And certainly by then, we hope to have a full-fledged event and no issues. I feel like April 30th, May 1st, I think there's, you kind of along the lines of what Corey's saying, if you set that date for planning purposes, I feel like there's a strong likelihood that the rug gets pulled out from under you. And in my conversation with Jody, her belief is that would be, the committee would rather work towards that date knowing that they may have the rug pulled out from under them than to just pull the plug on it now. I really think it may be too soon. I just hate to have people running around and working on something that I think is 50-50 coin toss at best right now. But if that's what y'all think that the committee would prefer to do, I mean, certainly understand that, but I think we're still a long ways from being out of the woods on this, and definitely March 19th is a no-go. And I really don't know that 4 or 5 weeks after that it's going to be any different or not.
Councilman Brown, for comments?
I'm hard-headed, you know where I stand.
Yeah.
Councilman Bowe?
Actually, I'm not quite as hard-headed, but I tell you, I am leaning that way. These businesses need to get open. We need to have some people, and if you do feel nervous about coming up there and getting exposed, then I suggest don't come. But to run this thing in fear and not support this town, I think is wrong. And like I say, if you feel uncomfortable, just don't come to the show. If you come to the show, be prepared to wear a mask and keep your distance. I mean, we're out and about right now, every day. So I'm kind of leaning towards, let's get on, let's get it going. So Jack, where do you stand?
Well, I think if we're being asked to give them an alternate date, I'm certainly in favor of setting aside, the weekend or the April the 30th date. I'm certainly in favor of that, with the understanding that it may not occur. And if the Arts and Crafts Committee is willing to put in the effort, and I mean, they've already put in a lot of effort. I mean, a lot of the work, not all the work, but a lot of work has already gone into this, and it's already been done, so they're not having to redo it all for that date. But if they're willing to put forth the effort with the understanding that it may have, you say the plug pulled, or the rug pulled out from under them, I believe that they may pull the plug themselves. It's not like that we would necessarily have to make that decision. I think they came to us tonight knowing full well that they need to change the date, and I think that's the responsible decision. And I think that they would make the responsible decision, and they would, you know, with the city, agree that we don't need to. I have been looking at the trends, and the trends are down significantly over the last month, or really in the last 3 weeks. And I hope that trend continues. We've seen this trend where it peaks and then it goes down and then it peaks again. We've seen that. Of course, those trends before never included vaccinations. So I would think that if we could continue the trends, we may not see as many as the magnitude of reductions that we've seen. I've seen in the state of Alabama, for instance, I believe the 7-day average went from a roughly 4,000 cases a day, and the last time I looked at that this morning about 6 a.m. when it's about 2,000 a day, which is still not an acceptable number, but if it was to continue on that slope, we might get there. So my vote would be to allow them the use of the streets with the caveat that we're only planning. And so I guess, council, we would need to take a vote at the next meeting to allow the use of the streets for that date before they can even continue to plan. So I would ask you, how do you feel about supporting that?
I'm a nay.
Okay.
I'm on the fence.
Straw poll on the fence.
On the fence.
I know you too. Kevin? Yeah. I would tell you that I would vote yea to allow the use of the streets, and so it would pass. I don't believe that this is an ordinance. This would be a resolution, so I'm looking at the mayor. I don't think that this is something that the mayor, should she oppose it, could veto. So it's just a temporary thing. So I would think, it sounds to me like we'll put it to a vote at the next meeting, Lisa.
Got it.
And if you needed an answer, center that. The straw poll supports changing the date.
Thank you. And I can tell you that our primary concern is the citizens of Fairhope, absolutely. So we are absolutely on board with that. But we also know that our downtown businesses are hurting, our artists are hurting. So we're just trying to do the responsible thing. And certainly with your direction, we will absolutely do that.
I would add, these folks work so hard. I mean, I do appreciate everything y'all do. And so don't take me being on the fence for not appreciating it.
It's a tough
I'll see
decision.
you tomorrow,
I respect
Jimmy.
everyone's decision.
Yeah.
I respect everyone's opinion.
Yeah, I hope everybody understands it's not personal. I mean,
No, we understand,
yeah,
and we
it's-
will
it's,
revisit it and continue to
it's
watch.
just where we are right now in life, and
Yep.
nobody, there's only one person that can solve that problem,
Right.
so.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. All right. Budget discussions. Mayor Sullivan?
Thank you. Yes, so I'm going to turn it over to Jill Cabanis, our finance manager, to talk about the budget.
Does everybody have the latest sheets given out?
Yes.
While Jill's coming up, I will tell you, I appreciate Councilman Burrell and Martin for spending the day with me on Friday and reviewing the budget, and for all the work the council has put into to helping me facilitate this process, because as y'all know, when I took office, there was not a budget in place. So it has been, it's a lot to come into that big of a budget, and just all the capital, capital projects and all the equipment folks are asking for, and to prioritize all that. So, and thanks to Jill and Kim and the department heads for really working through this process with me. But I'm glad that we're here, and hopefully we can get it passed tonight and we can move forward with some of these projects. Thank you.
And I also want to thank you, Mayor, and you, Councilman Martin, for spending the entire day trying to finalize this, and everybody that was involved, going back and forth to Jill and going back and forth to Kim and bringing them in the office and sending them back to their office to crunch numbers and change numbers. It was quite an ordeal, and but we were able to pull it together like we had hoped to for tonight.
Yeah.
That it was a race to the finish line, and thank you.
So, good evening, council and mayor. This budget is very conservative, especially in the general fund. Revenues are very, very conservative, as you all should know already.
Except for sanitation, right? Well, actually, they may be conservatives after today's discussion.
Expenses are bare bone as well. We do have our property tax budgeted at the 97% of what came in from the Baldwin County Revenue Commissioner's Office. We also have budgeted a 2% increase for all employees. Do want to point out that there are 4 new departments this year. If you look on page 4, we have elected officials. The mayor and the council get grouped in this this department. Flip over to page number 7, where we have information technology. There's several staff in this department, and we just felt like it had enough expenses to branch off on its own. Going over to page 8.
Can I touch on that real
Sure.
quick, Jill? I want to point this out as well, is that if you look at the IT department there on page 7, you'll see the 2020 actuals year-to-date in the budget, and the reason that the increase is so great is there's a lot of money being spent in IT, but you'll see that there were no entries for employee medical insurance and workman's comp and a lot of other categories of expenses that simply had zeros in 2020 that were being spread among other departments in the city. So when they truly get divvied up to this department like they should, you'll see that number tends to swell by a fair amount. But most of those numbers came from somewhere else. So
That's right.
Those other departments would have shrunk by, let's say, almost an equal amount, less some small percentage.
Yes, in the past, both IT, revenue, and elected officials have all been expensed out of general admin. They've had their kind of own line item. IT did not, revenue did. The mayor and council did as well. So you may notice that the general admin in certain areas, as Councilman Burrell pointed out, the medical insurance, the workers' comp, the casualty property insurance, it looks to be less in the general fund because that's where it was expensed in 2020. But then you come over to the 21 budget and it looks like it's more. And in order to break that out, it would have been an absolute nightmare. So just know that it was expensed all this time in general, and now we're breaking it off into their own departments. So we have revenue on page 8. And then if you turn to page 23, you'll find all our non-departmental facilities. We felt it best this year to create some sort of department that held all of our outside entities like our library, the parking garage, the Boys and Girls Club, the Haven, the K1 Center, Fisherman's Wharf, and that's just a good way for it not to be all combined into general admin, and you now can find it very easily if you need to.
That's fantastic, Jill.
And we're seeing a total
Mayor,
cost of how much these facilities cost us. I want to point out some kind of newer things, only because of green sheets that have been done very recently. If you go to page 12, you will notice the museum, under capital improvements, has an increase there of $19,726. This is the professional artist consultant for the Mullet Run Fountain refurbishment and retile work. And that was not in the original capital outline that you guys received. Anything that I have gotten a green sheet for, I had to go back and make sure was in the budget. Another one I want to point out is the Church Street outfall project, drainage project. We had some CE and I that came through on green sheet number 1884. It added about $65,000 in water, $169,000 in sewer, $70,000 in gas.
I'm sorry, I was trying to go back to that fountain. What page are you on again?
I'm on page, I'm back in the very back on the Capitol, the 11 by 17 paper.
Okay.
And you'll just notice those amounts have changed on that one particular project, and that's what it is. I just added in the green sheets for that particular project. And then, of course, we added, I believe it was almost $19,000 for the general fund. If you look at page 27, you'll see the council edits there, and I only put them under council edits because green sheets have been approved. 89,585, and that is for the drainage project. They're different amounts for various, I can't remember what all, but they all add up, and they're all related to the general fund. I think some storm drainage, and I can't remember the detail on that, but they all add up to the 89,585. And if you turn over to the very next page, on page 28, you see where the impact fee fund is transferring out to the capital projects fund of that amount. So that has been added. Those, I believe, are the kind of the last minute add-ons based on, just green sheets that have been approved. Our personnel is very, we're not asking for a lot this year. I think we have one fire station custodian that is being requested. We've got an intern in economic community development, a carpenter 3 in public works. In the utilities, we do have several new positions as well as promotions. And utilities does need a lot right now, so they're not as, flat as the general fund. So on page 1, you will notice that I left in the 8% from the utilities for the $970,000. But if you come down, the 484 is the difference between what 12% would be and what 8% would be. So 484, and then you have your surplus of $1,300 roughly.
Point out that, where was that for?
So if you go to the very bottom, Jack,
I'm looking down there.
look at the right-hand corner.
Right, 480?
Yeah,
484,
There's a deficit of 42, but right below that, in very small print, that I have to use my machine, there's some words there that says 12% transfer for utilities amount is difference between current 12%. Total would be 1.454 million.
That's right.
I see, I got, so the 484 and the 970 give you that.
That's
Yeah, I'm
that's
following you
correct.
now.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Takes me a while to find these small numbers sometimes.
Yeah.
Well,
I wish I could
and that's-
print it bigger, but.
And that's I asked Jill to keep it that way, simply because that's the way y'all had been seeing it when we looked at budget drafts. So just keep it that way, just to keep it consistent.
Yeah, and I know we had the 12% pilot
We did,
fee in
we
there.
did.
And,
Is there anything else you wanted to ask or for me to touch on? The capital pretty much is, stayed the same. We've still got the 3 patrol Tahoes in there, just kind of naming some of the bigger ticket items. The fire truck's still in there. Thought it was supposed to be here in December.
It's here.
So it's here, okay.
yes, it was delivered last week.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm not too far behind.
Nope, I crawled around that thing for about an hour last week.
Oh, wow. Recreation's got a good bit of capital improvements.
Let's talk about that. Mayor, will you discuss exactly what those Volanta improvements are going to be? We have to have the drainage study, right?
The topo.
Right,
Topo.
there's a topo of the Valana Park. But part of those improvements are the ADA upgrade at the stadium, at the football stadium on the home side. That will be adding ADA accessibility ramps, and we created a parking lot there back behind the concession stand for ADA accessibility. And then also just the youth park itself for baseball is redoing is looking at options for expanding that park and kind of retrofitting it, I guess is the best way to say
Does
it.
that figure include enough money to add fields?
It does include enough money to add some fields.
Okay, I'd love to be able to tell people how many we're
Yeah,
adding.
I think it's four, Pat?
4, from what I
Four.
understand.
So
4
that would
fields.
include, the ADA,
Right.
parking, and 4 fields.
4 fields, correct.
Fantastic.
And we also
James,
added.
you hear this? I asked that for you,
Right.
brother.
Other upgrades that we have too is when people go to the park, they're going to notice that there is a new platform there on the peanut field, I believe. The press box came down, there's a platform there. Also at Founders, the same thing is happening at the softball parks. So Recreation's been really busy doing some upgrades at the parks in this off-season, so we appreciate the job they're doing.
Questions for Jill or the mayor or Kim?
The other thing too that includes in Recreation and maybe is the replastering of the pool, which y'all had approved also. So the replastering of the pool to get that fixed.
Yep. So Mayor, basically when we left it Friday, I thought that we were going to have be a little bit more in the black, but because of those additional unbudgeted items that we added, I think
Right,
today
right.
is why that number is back
Right.
down. It kind of
Right.
ate that up, okay?
It did, and you really have to, again, I mean, I'm glad, Jill brought that up because you do have those green sheets, things that have been approved that weren't necessarily budgeted, to add those back in to get a true picture of what the budget looks like, because when you're late passing it, obviously, you still have to do business.
Well,
And so
technically,
to get some
the
of those things
budget
in
is
there.
on the agenda tonight prior
It
to
is.
some of those agenda items.
It
So
is.
I noticed like even the fountain is now after the budget and it says unbudgeted. Well, maybe by the time we get there, it'll be budgeted.
It'll be
so.
budgeted.
No, Founders was something going on with Founders as well.
Yeah, Founders, the press boxes came down, and there'll be platforms built in place,
And the
in
roof.
place of it, right. So they can do scorekeeping. Also, there's been some renovation to the concession stand that was damaged during the hurricanes. So, yeah, there's
Yeah,
pretty
we're
much
gonna cover
improvements
that
at all
in
of
the
our
work
parks.
session. I mean, in the agenda meeting, because I'm wondering how that roofing cost at Founders was so high
Yeah.
compared to, it was higher than the Civic Center.
I think it's multiple facilities, though,
That's
at Founders, if I'm not mistaken.
There are that many roofs out there.
We're just trying to figure out, yeah.
We'll get to it. We'll get to that. It's on our radar. Other questions for Jill?
Yeah, looking through the Civic Center, is there a new thermostat for council chambers in there?
There's a new HVAC
Yep.
for the council chambers.
But we'll use an old thermostat.
Heater works.
Is he broke because they're trying to hurry Jack along? What's the deal?
I think so. Trying to sweat us out of here. Anything else? You got all your questions answered, Kevin? Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you, Jill.
you're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kim, and all the department heads and everybody that had inputs on the budget.
Very good job.
Committee updates. Councilman Martin?
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Councilman Brown? Councilman Boone?
Well, we'll have a harbor board meeting Wednesday. Pretty much the only thing I have.
The Airport Authority met last week. We have some repairs that need to be made that we postponed the payment on. There were some other repairs that we made that we did approve funding for. The RFPs went out for the refinancing of that bond, and it was originally a bond, and then it was refinanced through your typical bank refinancing, but it's still tied to bonds, so they call it a refinance, but it's still, you still have to get bond counsel involved. Now, that saved a lot of money a few years ago, and because rates have gone down substantially again, we're trying to refund those yet one more time, and we had Kim run the numbers on that. The bottom line is that it will increase the pace at which we're retiring the debt. All the savings and the interest will be transformed to our principal payments. So, and therefore, reducing the debt at a greater rate. We're still in discussions over the hangars out there, and I ran a bunch of numbers last week, and it's really difficult to build those and break even without charging more what I perceive the Airport Authority doesn't want to charge in the hangar rents. So kind of fighting that battle. I have to wear that Airport Authority hat, but I'm also wearing the city hat mostly on this and fighting that battle to get those rents to a reasonable rate. There's a question of whether or not the city, they'll get a much better rate on that if the city backs it. I've asked the chairman when he goes out and seeks financing to get a number without the city guarantee and then with the guarantee. But I'm going to share some more information on that as I crunch some numbers to bring forth some more numbers to council in the very near future, council. So look for that. We'll have to make a decision of whether or not we want to support that, if it makes financial sense or not to support the building of some hangars. I feel like if the Airport Authority does it, they'll become financially independent that much quicker. If we don't, somebody else is going to build them, and they're going to get a much longer term lease, a ground lease, further delaying, in my opinion, the retirement of all the debts that the airport has. So I've been in a lot of discussions with Councilman Martin. He's taken a real keen interest in the airport, and also with our treasurer, and keeping the mayor informed. I think I've been keeping everybody informed as to where we're at on that. So, there are no more committee updates, department heads. Jill, anything else? Terry?
Yeah, real quick. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Y'all get it. It's hot in here.
It's hot.
Just real quick, we've met our number and exceeded our number of protected services. We're at about 430 as of Friday. So we got that, and we're still climbing. The contract's about 2/3 the way through, so we're gonna get quite a few more done to catch us up on the next 10% for the next year. We ought to get a little bit of a gain on that. The employees I'm to hire, the two that I turned in to HR a couple weeks ago when I met with y'all, both have refused and took jobs elsewhere. I have since turned in another one. And the two more that I have picked, one has also decided to take another job to say. So I've got one more interview to do. So hopefully we can get that process taken care of without having to send it back through the process again. As of right now, that's all I got. If y'all have any questions for me.
Questions, council? Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
All right. Chief Ellis?
Thank you. Just like Jack said, Council President said, the new engine is here. It's down at Sunbelt being outfitted. Should be, I would say, in service for the next week to 2 weeks. And as soon as we get it in service, it'll be here for everyone to look at. So We're very excited and very proud of that truck.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Pat?
Good evening, thank you for the time. The replastering of the pool went very well.
Is it done?
The plastering is done. It has to cure for a period of time, for about 14 days. And during that time frame, our lifeguard staff will be suiting up in wetsuits and getting in it to brush the plaster to help it cure. And once it goes through that curing phase, we'll start to add the chemicals and turn the heater on to warm the water up. In the meantime, we are doing some interior painting of the walls and the pool deck in there and just trying to give the place a facelift.
What about the platforms, Pat? Have they
Building
been-
maintenance is going to be installing those during
Okay.
this time
And they
frame.
put in new tile on the bottom when they replastered on the lines?
The tile stayed the same. They
Okay.
just worked around the tile.
I worked around it?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. And it actually looks really good. They did a nice job.
Okay, good.
The clay courts were renovated and completed, and we've gotten a lot of compliments on that since the hurricane damage that was done to those. On the pool, I wanted to mention that you're going to hear some more discussion about this in the future, but we do have some pretty significant structural integrity issues with the building because of the corrosive environment. We have one large roll-up door now that's not working, and I've, asked several times to get a quote on having it repaired. And because the metal purlings holding the actual door structure up are in such bad condition, we kind of have to look at different options on what we need to do. So you'll be hearing more about that. I met with Richard and George Ladd, and he suggested we get a structural engineer to give us a report of where we stand with it and what we need to do, what we need to address going forward. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Fairhope High School soccer started. They played 2 games at Valana Friday and 4 games, I believe, on Saturday on a wet field, and all went well. The middle school has started playing games at the soccer complex, and that's going very well. The first varsity baseball game will be this week on the 11th, weather permitting, obviously. I would guess it's going to be cold and wet. But that's it for me. Unless
Do
you
we have
questions.
an agreement with Baldwin Board of Education for the schools to use the soccer complex?
Do we have an agreement?
Yeah.
No, we do not.
Would that be in order?
Yes, sir. There's a lot of things that we need to address about that. Yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah. We're gonna need to, what's that?
I don't know that we've ever had an agreement with them.
We have agreement for them to use Volanta. It's city facilities, and I think they would be in order. That if it would be,
Just basically that, adding it to that one, figuring out use other times, all that kind of stuff, hierarchy of use.
yeah, I mean, like I said, it's got to be, yeah, worked out, the hierarchy of that. I mean, I don't think Baldwin Board of Education can govern usage of those fields.
Good point.
And just to avoid a conflict, we probably ought to
Sure.
get something ironed out there.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Chief Hollingham? Okay. Michael?
I don't really have a whole lot. Things are progressing on the substation projects. Gathering a lot of data for the last request from FEMA for reimbursement, so we're getting a lot of information for that. But going along pretty good, still dealing with streetlights, waiting for parts. As soon as we get parts in on streetlights, we put them up until we run out of parts and then wait till the next shipment comes in.
Where would you say we're at on the percentage-wise on our substation projects?
Twin Beach is almost done. We have a little bit more work to do on the center tub. Nichols is getting close. Once the budget's passed, we're going to go out for bid on the distribution and sub-transmission work parts pieces and get that here so that we can get a contractor on board, start doing the line work to energize everything.
Where do we stand on the relocation of the substation to, I'll call it Morphe?
Yeah, the civil engineers got the survey work done. They said either Friday or today. Then they'll take that and start putting it into their plans for filling that in and then making sure that everything's going to work and we're not going to affect downstream drainage. that kind
Where
of
do we
thing.
stand with the residents of that area?
We're going to, once we get this plan from the civil, we're going to do all the public awareness meetings and things like that, just to show them what the plans are, artist renditions of what the sub's going to look like, all the numbers on the flow rates through there, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think their biggest issue is going to be drainage, obviously, so we have to have that information prior to being able to have any kind of meetings with anybody.
Right. Yeah, and I want the professional civil engineers there to be able to answer those questions. So, water, electricity, bad, so.
That's going to be interesting.
Mhm.
Very interesting.
Aesthetically, though, it's going to be an upgrade.
Oh, yes. We're going to put a lot of landscaping work into
Put
it.
that out there.
The ultimate goal is not to be able to see it from Morphe. You'll see all the landscaping
Yeah.
and then a little bit of overhead, but all the feeders were going to come out underground, things like that. So you'll see the 46 going in there, one feeder. The second feed will be underground on the 46 transmission system as well.
Very good.
So,
Could put some concrete in that adjacent retention ponding, call it the new aquatic center.
there's some nice bass in there.
Some nice bass in there?
There are some nice bass in there. We were out there one time just to see how it got during a rainstorm, and you could see them jumping. There are some nice bass in there.
I didn't even think it was supposed to actually hold water.
I don't
not.
think it is.
It's supposed to be detention,
It's supposed to be a
isn't it?
detention pond, yeah.
Originally, it was not.
Yeah.
But it's prime snake
Now the
country.
fish have taken over.
Yes.
So unless y'all have questions for me,
Questions, council?
thank you much.
Thank you.
Jason?
I don't have a whole lot, but I know you are in a hurry. On tonight's agenda, we have our truck, or putting together our added water crew. You all hear, I get complaints every day. We're about 3 weeks out on services, making new services. So that's on the agenda tonight. We start interviews this week, trying to replace the 2 that we lost that went to other place, and 4 new positions for water and sewer. But I can't come up here without giving our guys a attaboy. They're doing a great job.
Right.
Yeah.
We're just, we got 80 lift stations we maintain and 10 wells and 6 treatment plants, and it's 4 guys on the sewer side, and most of the time we don't even have 2 full crews here because of sickness or what we're having to deal with. So I think they're commended. They're very much commended for what they do.
Jason, do we have any one person assigned to lift station inspections? Is that something we do daily? Is that,
Yep.
I mean, is it just kind of, a lot of the problems that we have with our lift stations are because we don't get the signal that there's trouble, and then we find out when it's too late. So is there, Councilman Martin and I had this discussion on Friday, and we just thought we'd ask, is there anybody assigned to that, or does it even make sense to have someone just run around and check every lift station?
We've got
I mean, we got the SCADA system,
It's
but
coming.
power goes down,
Right.
SCADA fails, you don't know there's a problem.
Well, let's go with the people. We got 4 people on the crew that dedicated to lift stations for that. For SCADA, we're in the process of upgrading all of our SCADA to emission. We've got, and I'm going to spout a number out, I'm not positive, I think around 15 or 16 of those stations are on SCADA now. Christopher Softly is our electrician that's doing, he does a great job with that.
Right.
And those do have battery backup, so when you do lose power, it will let us know, okay?
Right.
We just, we're getting them on our main stations first, and we're spreading it out.
Okay.
We're, even before the budget got passed, we're still buying 3 or 4 at a time, and then when you get some put in, we'll buy 3 or 4 more. So hopefully, if the way we're going after the budget passed, within the next 3 to 4 months, we'll have all the stations on missions, which is our SCADA format that we're using now.
And you do say that in the part of SCADA, when you lose power, you
Yes.
get a signal, because I've been harping
Yes,
on
sir.
that for as long as I've been sitting in this chair. And it's to say that, sometimes when you don't get a trouble signal, you think everything's fine. Sometimes you might want one of those that that gives you an all-clear signal every now and then, because when you lose power, you can't get a trouble signal because there's no way to get the signal out. And then there's a false feeling that everything's fine when everything's not fine.
Well, the SCADA that we've got, the technology's there, it does that. It's battery backup. So when we lose power, it sends out, right now they're based, it'll call our folks. It goes down the list and calls, so.
Yeah, I think if I recall, we lost power and it couldn't make calls. So it sat there and spilled for a few days before we knew there was a problem.
Right, but don't confuse battery backup with generator backup.
No,
Battery
yeah, right.
backups for notification, and then we have to send somebody out to take care of the
I
problem.
understand.
Generators need to be on the lift stations to prevent
Yeah.
those power failures.
But we don't have generators.
No, we do not. We do
That's
not. But I just didn't want that to be confused.
Right. No, I wish there was some logic to program in the SCADA to say, to ping, every now and then it says, I'm good.
And we watch it, the screens, our on-call guys and all, they watch it. So, yes.
Okay.
I fully believe that the system that we're going with now is the top notch. I used it in Georgia for my time over there, and it's user-friendly. And the big part of it is our guys can install it, and they can troubleshoot it. So you're not hiring an outside source. So I think it's great for the cost. It's about $3,900 per station. And then, of course, a monthly because it's cellular based.
Is that a one-time cost, that $3,900?
Yes, sir. And it's a monthly cellular based. So I'm not sure what that is. Jeff would know cost on that. I don't know what the monthly cost is.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jason. Hunter?
Thank you, Council President. Just wanted to talk really briefly and kind of get a feel for an item I'm about to bring to you next month. At the March Planning Commission meeting, we will be proposing a topic of conversation that I've talked to you all about, especially Kevin and Mayor. Councilman Boone and Mayor has really been interested in a solution to the family subdivisions. We've talked about kind of ad nauseum, and we are proposing on March 3rd, I believe, that proposal. Our goal there is to make that a streamlined approach, a little easier for applicants that meet the family subdivision criteria. And we can't call it family subdivisions, so we're working with the state subdivisions. What we would like to do is have a reduced fee to that. Planning Commission cannot approve that, so that would be a fee schedule that would come to council. So unless there's opposition, I would like to have that option available and at least propose to council, and we can talk about the numbers. Normal subdivision costs are anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 with some additional fees per lot. We're thinking 100 or 200. It would, if we get this to a streamlined approach, it really doesn't take staff time like the other subdivisions would, so we don't see the need to charge that fee. While we're looking at the fee schedule, we also, and this is something that's been discussed in the past, we have other items that might bring to you site plan review, for instance. I think all of those come to council. We're one of the few cities that does not have a fee for that, and that takes an incredible amount of time. So we do not have a fee on our schedule for those, and we also don't charge for legal the ads we have to do. So we never recoup that cost. So that 3 items from the fee schedule that I'd like to propose, and just wanted to kind of tee that up. If there's any questions between now, I think I would have to get that by Wednesday, so it might not be next council meeting, but the 1st in March. If there's any conversations we need to have, we've got some research on other cities around us, what they're doing. It's hard to, not always an apples to apples comparison, but similar. Sometimes they have a similar process. So if there's any questions on those between now and then, I'll be happy to answer those, or tonight, if you have any.
Questions, council? Okay, thank you. Jessica?
Hey
everybody. I like your 3-minute timer that I haven't seen at all this year, and I wish you
Cut
would
it
put
on.
us all on it.
Put it on her.
Could you put the timer on me? No, really quickly, I wanted to give you an update on the app. We did roll that out the last week of the year. In that time period, we've had about 2,200 to 2,500 people sign up for the app. We really want to push that, so if you could help us push that, because we're going to begin moving from Everbridge to the app as our main notification system. I know Kevin's been getting my push alerts because he loaded it on his phone right in front of me. But we will be pushing that out as much as we can. We just need the residents to really, to kind of take that and download it to their phones. We have had some people reach out. I get all of the notifications when somebody has an issue in the app, and so I get them all. And we've had some issues that we go directly to the developers. They've been incredibly responsive. To go in and kind of fix bugs with different versions of the operating systems on the phones. So if you get any kind of feedback like that from a resident, we do have people on the ground working on that every day. So just wanted to give you a quick update. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kim? All right. We'll jump right into our agenda. Hunter, I guess that's 5, 6, and 7 are public hearings. So you'll brief us on those?
Yes, sir, and 8 as well.
Okay. 5, 6, and 8 will be a first read. 5, 6, 7, well, 8's a final adoption.
Yes, sir.
But the first 3 are public hearings, so we'll need to hear about those in detail. 9 and 10 are annexations, and that speaks for itself. 10 has to do with our code of ordinance regarding gas service fees, inspection fees. Number 12, who will be speaking about the, Chief, would that be you? You want to go ahead and touch on that now? That's to do with our towing fees.
Yeah, I was contacted by Tony's Towing, and they have not had a great increase since 2012. So I went back and I researched what the other sister cities were doing and what their rates were. And what they're asking for is about a $50 increase in their storage. No, I'm sorry, that would be their towing. Their storage is only an increase of about $10 or $15. So they're right in line with everyone else, Daphne, Gulf Shores, Foley. So like I said, it's about a $50 increase.
If you look at your MacBooks, Council, and scroll back on item 12, you'll see one sheet where there are some edits made. There was a scan sheet, and that shows the old charges with the proposed charges on them. Now, I understand they haven't been raised since 2012, but I don't know if inflation has gone up by 40% since 2012, and some of these charges are going up by 40%. $125 to $175 is, I think, 40%.
And this is only going to affect the calls that when the police department actually requests a rotation record.
All right. Council, I'll ask you if you have any questions for the chief. Do you have any now?
Yeah, what's that volume look like? I mean, what does that volume look like?
It varies.
Calls or requests to have a car towed, what does that volume look like?
It would vary. I don't have an exact number right now, but it would vary. It just varies because we would respond, or we would ask them to come pick up a vehicle from a wreck. And that just, you can't put a number on that. An arrest, if we had them come out and pick up a vehicle because of an arrest, then they would need to come back.
We don't have any knowledge of how often we're calling and what type of volume we're giving them.
I don't have a number right now, but I can get that information for you.
I just think that, if we were talking about looking at numbers, we would have to have all the information to see if this was a good idea or not. And I think we're missing a couple of pieces of the puzzle. I mean, you understand what I'm saying, Jimmy?
And did you say this is a rotation? This is not, they brought this to your attention, but this affect, you rotate through who you call for accidents?
We do.
Okay,
And they
so
are
it's
the.
not one particular
So it
record
impacted
service.
everybody.
This would be what everybody's paid in the rotation.
Okay.
Correct.
So it's not just,
Not just.
No, they just, that record service brought it to the chief's attention, am I correct?
Now, this
Lauren?
is, now Tony's is the only one we have in our
That's what I'm telling
rotation.
Okay.
We do not have
Just
any
one
other in our rotation.
that's what I'm asking.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the chief?
Do you want me to get those figures for you? And it's not going to be exact, it's just going to be an estimate. And I can pull them for, maybe the last,
You could if you have time, but I would say this is being an ordinance, this would be introduced and discussed and I'm sure tabled for the next meeting. So
Okay.
we wouldn't be making a vote on it tonight, but if you could get it to us, soon.
Okay.
Would that be agreeable?
I think so.
Okay.
all right.
Okay, all right, thank you. Item 13 is the budget, and we'll have Jill, Kim, and Mayor on hand to answer questions for that. Item 14, I think I can handle that. That's just a memorandum of understanding. This $75,000, which is paid to various coaches of all sports that help out with the summer programs and summer camps. This is something we've been doing for multiple years. The only change is in that instead of the city of Fairhope paying these coaches, we will be giving the money to the Board of Education, and they will be dispersing the funds to them. And then that helps these coaches out in their compensation plans. But there's no change in dollars to the city of Fairhope. Item number 15, I can handle that. I'll briefly discuss that. Behind the K1 Center, there are some community gardens. They've been under lease to the Local Food Production Initiative, doing business as Fairhope Community Gardens for, how long was that lease? Like 10 years or so?
It's been going on.
Been in there for about 10 years, and it's expiring, so we need to renew it. But in this renewal, knowing that some changes may be coming to the K1 Center, it's basically just an annual renewal, and we can break that with what's the notice in there? And it's back in there. Was
It's 90 days?
90 days. We thought 90 days would be maybe any growing season that they may be in the midst of. And there's not much. I think it's $10 to these people. It's $10, a one-time fee of $10. So we're not making money off of this. It was truly a community service. And then they choose the people that get to participate in the community garden. So the city of Fairhope doesn't have a say in who gets to garden that. We don't get to pick friends and family to garden that. So I think it's done. We never had a problem with it. And there was some other language in there, but because when this was initially entered into, there were classes at the K1 Center, and so we don't have to set aside times that they can't go there and things like that, with permission from the principal, because that doesn't exist either. So item 16 was just in the engagement of Hand, Arundel, Harrison, and Sale, which is our primary council, to be the bond council in this Fairhope Airport Authority and City of Fairhope in connection with this refunding of this bond that I mentioned in my comments earlier. You have to have these bond attorneys included in this. And it's not like you're issuing a big bond. There's not those tens of thousands of dollars of cost that you typically see. I would expect it to be much, much less, an order of magnitude less than that. Number 17, Mayor, who will handle that if we have questions for that? Would that be Jessica? Jessica, you want to touch on that real quick? Item 17.
Sure. So we, as you have noticed, and if you haven't yet, we do have some city sketches in the back to be picked up for February. Thank you. So we've really redesigned how we're doing this, and in doing so, we recognize that the prior contracts that we had were a little bit too limiting. They really specified paperweight, number of pages, items like that that made it very difficult for us to do any kind of restructuring. That's included design, and so what you see on the agenda tonight are design services. So this will be the layout and all of the graphic design for that going forward.
Okay.
Any questions?
And you'll have another opportunity to ask Jessica during the meeting. Thank you. Okay, item 18. Richard, do you want to touch on that for a moment?
Yes, sir. As you know, last month, y'all approved the contract for the actual construction of the drainage improvements running from Oak and section down to the gully. This is just amending the professional engineering contract for Lieb Engineering to provide the construction, engineering, and inspection, and it's increasing that contract for that $3,250 to provide those services.
Okay. Any questions for Richard on that? Richard, do you have a few others?
Yeah, probably the one Jill gave you the primer on it, 22. I've kind of volunteered to serve as the project liaison in-house to handle paperwork and making sure all pay requests get signed. And this is a big housekeeping item, but for whatever reason, even though y'all discussed it in open council, the amendment to the contract never was formalized, and this is to get the CE&I in place for the Church Street improvements, which are underway. And you can see that. And just so you know where that number came from, what y'all reviewed and approved was 7.52% of the construction price for the CE&I services, and that's what it calculates out to.
Yeah, this is what Jill had mentioned, the additional $89,584 added to the budget today.
Correct, and it's divvied up between the utilities and public works since it's a multi-discipline project. And 27 is pretty housekeeping. We lost the fence on the south side of public works. This is replacing that. And I'll be glad to answer questions on 28, 29, which are roofs, but Pat is a little bit more familiar of the buildings and numbers of roofs involved in those. Roofs have become the banes of all of our existence these days, so.
Well, while I got you up there, though, speaking of roofs, where have we left it with the roof repairs at the K1 Center?
As you know, we had repairs done before Hurricane Sally, and we have re-inspected. We did have a little bit of damage. That is one of those that's still to come back and figure out what we need to do. The good news is we've been in the building a good bit, and we have not noticed any new water intrusion there. But, you know, as you remember, y'all authorized basically a patch job because we didn't know.
But that was completed prior to Sally.
Yes, and it performed pretty well. We had, and I think they came back and repaired at no cost some of the minor damage that occurred during Sally. So I will get you an update on that.
I had not recalled that, thank you.
As you know, we've had some break-ins, and so we've been in the building a good bit lately, and so far, it's staying dry inside.
Pat, well, you want to tell us about 28, those roofs out there at Founders Park?
Yes, so at Valana, we have, I think, approximately 5 structures that have to be re-roofed. We had the football press box was redone during football season, just post Sally, because we were in the middle of season. So I think we have 5 structures left to do. Founders, there's quite a few more. Basically, every dugout at Founders has to be redone because they were all shingle roofs. The concession stand, the 2-story building down at soccer. So basically, every structure out at Founders had to be redone. Not to mention, the concession stand at softball had some pretty significant structural damage because one of the press boxes blew over and fell on top of it. So that's why you see the numbers higher.
Okay. Do we anticipate FEMA reimbursement on?
Yes, sir.
On a good bit of this? Okay. All right. Let's go back. Let's go back now, if I may, to 19. the cast iron main replacement, the 5-year plan. So it's a deduction, all I'm seeing is just a deduction in that cost of 22.5.
That's correct. There was a portion of that contract, this contract was done several years ago, and a portion of that contract is the services are being performed by pain management services that you've already improved in the gas department, so we went back and revised that contract to make sure we weren't double billed for the same services.
I like reductions. Okay, so in all told, it was a 25, were all of these, because they're in parentheses, are they all deductions in?
There is, so it's a $25,000 deduction and a $5,000 deduction, and then we replaced one of the services with an emergency valve review,
Okay,
which
so
was
that's the addition.
$7,500. So it's a 22.5 reduction.
Oh, I see it now, that's the total, that's the net.
It is.
I got you. Okay. Item 20 is the fountain. I noticed in the budget it was 19,176. We'll have to scratch that where it says an unbudgeted item, since we'll pass that budget
Yeah.
hopefully in item 13.
Right, and the addition in the budget also includes the pump. It includes the pump work as well. That's why it's 19,000 in the budget.
Okay, and where's that pump now? It's,
You've already approved it.
I'm sorry, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And Michael, will you address 21? That would be the on-call professional services for the electric department?
Yeah, that's just to have Stewart Engineering, if we have anything that needs to come up, need them to look at a model or do some relay settings for us or anything like that.
And notice that's just a not-to-exceed amount.
Yeah, if we don't use it, we don't use it.
And they've been doing a good job, haven't they?
Yes, they've been doing
In
a
my
very good job.
opinion, looks like they have been from afar.
Yeah, they've been doing a very good job. Lance is not very knowledgeable, and trust his judgment.
Okay. All right, council, there's maybe a half a dozen or so that I knew that we wouldn't get to in the agenda meeting, but we did pretty good. Let's take about a 3-minute break and then reconvene.